it manufactures this kind of deadline for people to have to sort of figure out where they stand and have to do some research, let's say, and talk to people and get involved. So divestment resolutions they have more institutional power behind them, first of all, because it's actual like money moving. And then they also create this deadline that forces people to no longer be neutral. So I mean, my gut instinct is that divestment resolutions have more of that power behind them. But honestly, like, boycott campaigns can be really, really strategic as well. You know, they can, sometimes there isn't as much, you can kind of dive into them more. You're not held back by all these questions of what are we invested in and this or that bureaucratic thing. You can really kind of sink your teeth into it. So, I mean, I would defer to you guys 100% on, you guys evaluate, different targets and different tactics and what is most appropriate for your context and your campus. And the one thing I can do if you're not already connected, but is connecting you is hopefully you guys have been to, for example, the National Students for Justice in Palestine conference, and connecting to that vast network that has all of that institutional knowledge of BDS on campuses around the country. So.
I think one way of looking at that question has to do with whether your goal is consciousness raising or really doing things that will have an effect on ending the occupation. I mean, and if you decide to boycott something, it really can be a part of consciousness raising. And I think consciousness raising is still needed. I mean, it is, a lot of it's still needed. And that might be a way of, it's better to perhaps acknowledge that you're publicizing the issue through this boycott in perhaps a different way than divesting from corporations, which may be a tactic in a larger strategy. They're all tactics in a larger strategy, but consciousness raising is one aspect of that, and then activism and direct action is something else, perhaps. They may overlap.
Yes.
You mentioned something about BDS being a Palestinian-led movement, right? This sounds sort of a form of a movement. And I'm thinking, like, my question is pretty much virtual and hypothetical, but I'm thinking about whether you think, or you envision at one point, a movement that is US-led, that kind of moves or shares the objectives of BDS, but more of targets US involvement in Israel, and the kind of funding and the taxes and all the money that goes there, which can be led spatially and look here. Do you see that somewhere happening or sometime happening in the future?
Sure. So I guess I don't see it as one or the other. I think that we are positioned as people in the United States to very clearly challenge U.S. institutional support for Israeli occupation and apartheid, whether it's U.S. policies and military aid, or U.S. institutions, or cultural workers, or academic institutions, etc. And this comes up a lot, and I think a lot of individuals and organizations also have gone through this sort of question of are we a U.S. organization or are we a solidarity organization? Are we accountable to our American identity, or are we accountable to the Palestinian struggle inside Palestine? And I guess what I think is that we are here in the United States, we have in the belly of the beast. We obviously have to challenge U.S. support for Israel's occupation of apartheid. It would be hypocritical to not directly be challenging that, but we absolutely have to be all along the way listening to the voices of Palestinians, including Palestinians in the United States. I mean, the Palestinian exiled refugee population. Being in exile is the most quintessential Palestinian experience there is. So one doesn't have to be in Palestine, of course, to be representative of the Palestinian, part of the Palestinian community. But basically, I think it's actually really damaging when we sort of allow the U.S. perspective to sort of eclipse the Palestinian voice itself. I think that we can, or Palestinian voices themselves, I think that we can do both. I think we can be focused on U.S. complicity and listening to the voices of Palestinians at the same time. I don't know if that's too simplistic, but I personally think that if we don't do both, then something's wrong. I don't push back if you guys have different perspectives.
Well, I think part of the reason why I'm asking the question is I'm an international student from Palestine. Part of my culture shock when I got here is the fact that so many people have a neutral stand on things, and having no as though it's like inherently okay to be neutral about something that you kind of unconsciously support. Like neutrality to me is a kind of support, or like the fact that this money goes somewhere that ends up killing people, right? And so I am all for I'm of course all for Palestinian voices, but I think there is. I'm just wondering about it being some sort of a separate move, because there's a lot of energy to take on if you're a Palestinian trying to liberate yourself and make a case for yourself and doing all the work all the time, and trying to make people not be neutral about something that is so commonsensical to you, right? And so that's I'm just setting the diagram to that question. And part of me is hopeful that people become more aware of how complicity functions at times, especially in this kind of space.
I think that probably you guys are having these conversations yourselves, and you can get as good answers from your comrades probably than you can from me. I think that when I talk about that, I'm coming from the history in this country and in this movement of, for example, voices like my own being privileged because I'm not Palestinian and because I'm Jewish and because I'm white. People, inviting me to speak when they don't invite Palestinians to speak, and listening to me when they don't listen to the experts. The Palestinians are the experts on their own experience, and so it's sort of pushing back against that. And I think that there is a shift happening in the movement that is recognizing that Palestinians are the leaders of their liberation struggle, and that's what I'm talking, that there's, that the privileging of Jewish and white voices in this movement is rooted in racism and Islamophobia, and that's what we're pushing against. Not that we have to all take agency and responsibility for our own complicity, and whatever, this is getting too detailed, but I've been reading a book about white anti-racist accountability work, and the burden that it actually places on communities of color to be constantly sort of seeking that we need to also be owning and taking agency and taking responsibility for our own actions too, without placing that burden and onus on Palestinians. So, I don't know this, but that's the place I was coming from, I guess. Yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how to formulate this as a question. But I'm a student here in civil engineering, and going into the professional world after this or the next year, working with companies that are, or working directly with, Caterpillar produced equipment that's kind of, ubiquitous in the field, and they create sort of, equipment that is kind of can't really be matched in other ways. And using that as an example, I guess, in what ways is the BDS movement present in different professional spheres where actual products are that are being boycotted are kind of entrenched in the professional field?
Sure. I don't know if you heard when we were going to use the internet from the university, and I was saying, BDS is a tactic, not a dogma. That we choose targets strategically at strategic times to build power for the movement for justice, freedom, equality, and liberation. And so what that means is that we're not compelled to boycott every single thing that could be boycotted. We look at the menu of options and we focus very clearly on what is strategic and makes sense, because the goal is bigger than that one company. So I would say, like there are also like pieces of technology, Israeli technology that are used in some of our cell phones and our computers, and that's not going to be a boycott target, at least not right now. And I would say that in the case of Caterpillar, I mean, if you look at the anti-apartheid movement against apartheid South Africa, it was Polaroid workers that started the boycott. The workers of Polaroid company were the ones that started the boycott in response to Polaroid's complicity in apartheid. So being inside can be very strategic. So maybe let that be an asset and use it in organizing if you're able to. So basically, I mean, if there's a specific boycott and your involvement is specifically in violation of that aspect of the boycott, that would be one thing. But it doesn't sound like it from what I'm hearing. It sounds like it could even be an asset to have you placed, in relation to that corporation. So I don't know if everyone would agree with me, but that's kind of the way I see it. Let's get 3 more, and then we'll close. People are starting to get tired. Yes.
She was asking about whether the people in the United States would actually choose to divest or have a movement. First, it has to be the people. The government's not going to do it, and the companies aren't going to do it. So the people have to demand it. The people have to know about it in order to demand it. And so we don't have the media telling us the true information. So we have to make sure that we tell it. So people who know about it have to tell other people that don't know about it. And we have to also provide media ways. So we are doing it. It just takes a long time to do it. And eventually our government will have to do whatever we demand it to do, but there has to be enough people to do it, because they're not going to do it on their own.
Just connected to what being discussed here, I think the BDS movement actually is becoming more and more powerful because people have given up on government, on our elected officials. There was a time that there were some people who thought that there is something to come out of the peace talks, but we know that that was an illusion, and now more and more people know about that. So I think that's why people are going more towards that. But I agree with you when you say that they can go parallel. And I think in a community like ours, which is, we have a small progressive section, and then the majority of the community, but even among the progressives, there is not a dedication to making sure that their voices are heard against Israeli policies. For example, one thing that I think can be done is for community members, I mean, SJP does a marvelous job and they have to continue to do that, but for community people who are aware and they shouldn't just sit back because there are a few of them. Like we have local offices of our elected officials. Make it like a habit of going and sitting outside or occupying the offices, whether they are in or they are not. And over time, this may lead to more people become aware of it, and also representatives becoming kind of understanding that they cannot get away with it the way they have been.
Yeah.
So I think you should see it as a long time, just a long run strategy, not that it would give results immediate.
So if I was remiss, I forgot to bring a sign-up sheet, but maybe we can start sort of an ad hoc one in the back there. But especially, I spoke mostly to the university campus community, but there are lots of different